Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we will be continuing our journey with Flappy Glider. So last time we finished off by doing some storyboarding for this project. So today we'll be focusing first on creating the actual artwork for the project. So everyone should have created a character, some obstacles that they want to avoid, some backgrounds, a design for their button, along with anything else that you wanted to add to the game. So this first part of this video I'm going to stream past, but I would like you guys to create the artwork that you're going to be using for your project. It'll be a short time skip where I'll have all my sprites and everything created. During that time frame, you guys should be creating your own sprites, and then you can continue on with this video. I'll see you guys soon. And we're back. So during that time frame, it should take you about 30 minutes to an hour to create your sprites. I went about mine pretty quickly, did most of it using the paint tools. So you can see here, I just made it using the line tools and the other objects to create my main character. The button that we'll need to both start the game and restart the game, along with drawing out 3 different obstacles. You can have more obstacles if you want more variety, but 3 is like about the minimum that we'll need for this project. Beyond that, you should have 3 different backgrounds for your project, including an intro screen, your game screen, and your game over screen for when you lose. For the second half of today's lesson, we will be focusing in on coding the actual screens themselves first, along with getting the different obstacles and everything out of the way. So that way it starts looking more like a game instead of a jumbled mess. So first thing that we'll do is we should clear away everything on screen that's not supposed to be there. These include the Flappy Glider and the obstacle. If you guys remember, the code to do that is really simple. We are going to be looking at whenever we click on this flag, we want both these guys to disappear. So we're going to need to go into the looks section, grab ourselves a hide block, then over in events, when flag is clicked. Simple as that. We can do the same thing for the obstacles over here. One handy trick that I might not have shown you guys yet is the ability to transfer code from one part of your project to another, or actually in between projects as well. I'm going to open up my backpack. You can see I've already have a couple things in here. I'm going to be throwing in this code right here. When I do it, it's going to appear on the left, as that's the most recent addition to my repertoire here. I can go over to my obstacles and grab my code from there and just quickly drop it in. Not so impressive for just 2 blocks, but for larger sprites with similar mechanics, it can be helpful. Alright, with that out of the way, it's now time to get our button in the right spot. Our button should be centered when the game starts. So we should first, over here in this section, move the coordinates to 0 and 0. This way the button will actually be centered on my screen. And just to double check, it's always a good idea to see if your button will fit within the context of both screens that you're using it in. So I'm going to go over to my backdrops and toggle through both of these. I can see that my button might be a little bit big here, so I'm going to actually resize this down to about 90%. That way there's no weird clipping going on. Unlike the other two sprites, we want this one to appear whenever the game starts. So we are going to grab the when flag is clicked, it's going to show up. And in addition to that, we want it to show up in the right spot. So the reason why we change these two numbers is so that we can go over to this motion section and grab this go to X and Y. These two numbers should default to where it's currently at. So for our case, it's going to be 0, 0. You might also notice that even if I start, it says retry here. To do that, to fix that, all we have to do is go to the look section and grab the switch costume to block and swap this to the start button. You can do it while it's invisible too, so sometimes it's a good idea to make sure it swaps first before you show it. I'm actually going to reorder it like this as well, so that way you don't even see the movement. Save now. And when I start this, there we are. There's our button. That was easy. The next step that we should do is make sure that our screens are going to be showing up at the right time as well. In this game, we're going to have 3 different stages. There's going to be the intro section, the gameplay section, and the retry section. We know that we should only get to this intro section once, and that is when we first start the game. And that's when we click on this flag here specifically. So we're going to grab one event, one flag is clicked. We're going to make sure that it shows up only then. We're going to swap the backdrop to, not necessarily backdrop 2. In here, we have to take a look at what our backdrop is actually called. Sometimes it's easier to make sure that the actual names line up with what you want them to be. So I'm going to actually change that right now. Intro, game, and retry. So when I go back over to the code, you can see that the names have changed. This is much more manageable. I want to swap to my intro. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this block and duplicate it once and twice. This will be our game screen, and this will be our retry screen. We should only get to our retry screen whenever we see the game over message. So we're going to go ahead and actually create these messages now. We're going to need when I receive, game over, and we're going to need a second when I receive. This is going to be game start. And with that, the backdrop's done. At least for now. The next video will be doing the actual sounds, such as the background music back here in the backdrops. For now though, it's done enough, so that way we can keep on going. Our goal for today is to make sure that we can get our character up to, well, not our character, but our game up to the point when we actually see our sprites on the screen in the correct positions. So far, we got most of our background coding. We just have to do our button now. So inside of our button, to actually make this thing a button, we need an event that will trigger whenever we click on the sprite. We have one such event called when the sprite is clicked. And basically this is a trigger that will occur every time I tap on the sprite. When we click on the sprite, what we want it to do is first disappear. We want it to completely get off our screen. And then we want it to declare, hey, the game is starting. So we're going to take our second half to our broadcast and receive pair, the broadcast part, and we are just going to broadcast game start. And that should be it. If I click on this button, we should see our screen swap over to the game screen. And there you have it. At this point, we're going to want to make sure our character shows up, not necessarily our obstacles. There's a reason for that, and we'll get to that in the next video. For now, though, we're going to jump over to our Flappy glider and make sure that he shows up when he's called upon. When I receive, game start, we want him to show up. It's going to show. And we want to make sure he shows up all the time in the spot where we want him to be. In this game, momentum can take hold really, really fast. So it's actually a better idea to make sure that your character, first of all, is located on the left side of your screen. And that he's located somewhat more up than normal. What I mean by that is somewhere in like the 40 to 50 Y range, so that way players have a chance to react to the character falling, because gravity takes hold really, really fast. For my purposes, I'm going to be using negative 190 and 40. And you see that I've resized my character down a bit as well, and that's to better fit my game. If he was standard size, he'd be really, really huge. It'd be actually really, really hard to avoid anything. Half size is a little bit more fair. Once I've got his position in place, just like before, we're going to grab that motion block in that go to section. Make sure that he's always there when we start the game properly. We do have a bit of time for a little bit more. I think we should focus in on the actual variables now. In this game, there's quite a few variables that we'll need. And this is the spot where we're going to want to set them up. The variables that we'll need are, there's 7, so I'm going to grab 7 of these blocks. Alright. I'm going to talk about each variable and what they do. So the first variable that we're going to need is going to be momentum. So momentum is a property of objects that indicates how quickly they're moving up or down, left or right. In our game, it's going to be representing how quickly they're going up and down. Momentum is like a continuous force. Once you put something into motion, it's going to keep going until an outside force acts on it to slow it down, to bring it to a halt. In our game, whenever our momentum is positive, it's going to be sending our character upwards. Or if our momentum is negative, it's going to be sending us downwards. It's going to be the rate of change in our Y scale here. So when we start a game, we're going to actually want to make sure our momentum is not 0, so we don't immediately start falling. We're going to set this to be about 5 for now. Next, we're going to have our upper and lower bounds, our maximum momentum and our minimum momentum. These are important to prevent us from going way up into the stratosphere and crashing way down into the earth at Mach speeds. The way that this game will calculate our momentum will do it very, very quickly. It's almost like frame by frame. So if we aren't capping that, we are going to be sent flying way down without any chance of recovery. So this variable is going to be our max momentum. And we'll be setting this to 20. That way we can only go up by 20 pixels per frame, roughly. Which is a lot. And we're going to be setting our minimum momentum to minus 20. So those are our three momentum mechanics here. Our current, our max, and our minimum. Now we need things that affect these momentum values. The first one that we'll need is our power. Power is like our rate of change that we could add to our momentum. By setting power up here, whenever we reference power later on to increase our momentum, this is the value it's going to add. We're going to set it to 5 so that way it adds 5 power each time. This is what's going to be setting us upward, is the increase from our power value. To send us downwards, we're going to need gravity. As most of you guys know, gravity is a constant downward force that is going to be sending us down and down and down. It's going to keep affecting our player over time. It's a constant. And in our game, gravity is just going to be a constant -2. Every time it goes through and does this calculation for our momentum, it's going to subtract 2 from our current momentum to drag us downwards. One key thing here is that your power has to outpace your gravity. Otherwise, you're going to get into a situation where if it doesn't, let's say we don't have our power greater than our gravity is going to subtract more than what our power can add, so we'd be doomed to fall. The last two variables that we'll need are related to actually our scoring mechanism in this game. We're going to need a current score, which I'm just going to call score for short. This is going to be reset to 0. And our final variable is going to be our high score. When we begin, this should also be 0. Since we actually only want this to do it once, over here in our start button, actually anywhere for that matter, we're going to want to set our high score to 0 on any of these one flag it's clicks. That way it only sets the high score to 0 once. So now I'll run it. Save now. And start. Well, it looks right, but there's one glaring issue. We have way too much stuff over here. In the variable section, you can actually toggle off most of these, so that way that you can get them out of your screen. We don't need to know that gravity's -2. We don't need to see our high score when we're playing. It could be nice though. We'll leave that in for now. But we don't need to see our max momentum, our minimum momentum, or our actual current momentum or power. Once we clear those out, you can actually move these around And I'm going to just set them up like this. It does help to actually have this further out of the way, so that way our character, we can see his full range of movement even while things traverse over here. And with that, we're done for today. I'll talk to you guys in the next video, and we'll create our actual game. See you next time.